The Torah tells us in Parshas Toldot, Vayigdalu hane'arim. The boys grew up, Yaakov and Esav. Vayi Esav ish yodei tzayid ish sadeh. That Esav was a hunter, a man of the field. V'Yaakov ish tam yoshev ohalim. And Yaakov is a simple man, or an innocent man. You could translate the word tam in two ways. Or you'd also translate it as a complete man. Yoshev ohalim, a dweller of tents. So we're going to focus on Esav's trait of being a hunter. It doesn't say that he was a tzayad. He was yodei tzayid. He knew how to hunt, or he knew the art of hunting. And so Rashi tells us, yodei tzayid latzud ularamos es aviv bifiv. He knew how to hunt and to deceive his father with his mouth. Because when you're a hunter, you have to be cunning. You have to have guile to be able to ambush your prey. And that's what a hunter does. And you don't have to be a hunter with a weapon. You can be a hunter with your mouth. And that's exactly what Esav knew. And what is the example? Vishoalo, he would ask his father, Abba, Heich me'asrinet hamelach ve'et hateven. Father, how do you tithe salt and straw? Kisavur aviv shuv medakdek b'mitzvot. His father thought that he was a medakdek in mitzvahs, that he was very meticulous in his desire to perform the mitzvot. Now, what do we mean by the question, Father, how do we tithe salt and straw? Well, it's important to know that there's a mitzvah of tithing produce. We know that when you have a farm and you're supposed to take a tithe and give it to the Kohen, give to the Levi, give to the poor, but you're only obligated to do so with the actual produce of the field. You're not obligated to do that with the byproduct of the produce, which is kash, that's straw. There's no mitzvah to tithe straw because that's not produce. There's also no mitzvah to tithe salt because salt is a mineral. It's not something that grows in the field. So what Esav was doing is trying to show his piety, to go above and beyond the letter of the law. I know that I'm not obligated to tithe these things, but Father, if I want to, how should I go ahead and do it? Now, we've explained that according to the Malbim, Esav wanted to try and represent himself as the future partner of Yaakov Avinu. So one of the ways of explaining this midrash that Rashi quotes for us is that Esav wanted to, in a very artificial way, try to prove to his father that he was going to go above and beyond the letter of the law in taking care of the tithes that he needed to provide to his brother Yaakov. Because to whom do you tithe your field? You tithe your field to the Kohen, to the person who's the holy man, to the person who doesn't have his own field because he is engaged in Torah study and spiritual endeavors. And therefore, Esav represents himself as the ultimate tither. You have nothing to fear, Father. I'm always going to be there for my brother Yaakov. Not only will I give him the tithe that is due to him, and I will make sure that he is provided for, but I will go above and beyond my requirements of tithing, and I'll make sure that he even gets parts of my assets that I'm not even obligated to give to him. And that's one way of understanding exactly why this example is chosen as the sign of Esav's false piety. Because he's trying to represent himself as someone who reassures his father, don't worry, Father, I'll always take care of my brother, and I'll always make sure that the Kohen in our family and the Levi in our family is always provided for. Okay, so that is very consistent with the Malbim's explanation of this whole story. But I believe that there's something deeper that relates back to what we learned today in the Kuzari, as far as this idea of rivalry that always exists between the great and the near great. And there's something that is maddening to the brother who is the near great when he sees that his brother is destined for greatness and that he will never attain. So let's take a look at the Shem Mishmuel. We're just taking segments of this commentary from the Sachat Shavar, and he says like this, Ulahavin, let's ask the question, he says, Lama lo sha'alo dikdukei mitzvot acherim? Why did Esav only ask on this particular mitzvah of tithing? Kagon, why didn't he ask another question? Kagon shchita uchedome sheyesh ben dikdukei mitzvot be'emet. Why didn't Esav choose an area of law to focus on where there are many aspects of meticulousness that would have been genuine for him to inquire about? Why did he choose an act of tithing which is really false? There is no obligation to tithe straw or salt. V'nir'eh. He says, it would seem to me, Dihinei kol seder habriya haya b'matkonet shel tafel v'ikar. The whole world is constructed on a structure of main and ancillary, ikar and tafel. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi says this in a number of places in the Kuzari, when he talks about the elite nature of the Jewish people. And at one point in the Kuzari, the king asks him, why couldn't God create every person the same? Why is there a need for there to be an elite nation, a chosen nation? Why can't everyone be chosen? Why can't everyone be special? Which reminds me of that great line from the movie The Incredibles, where the villain says, I'm going to make everyone have superpowers, because when everyone is special, no one is special. Right? So the question that he asks is, why couldn't everyone be special? So what Rabbi Yehuda Levi's answer is? He says, I see that you've forgotten the very basics of our discussion. If everyone was created equally, then we could ask another question. Why does God create all different kinds of creation? Why are there animals and trees and dirt and all different components of creation? Let the universe be homogeneous and let everything be one glop of the same thing, whatever that thing is. Why is there so much diversity in the world? Just look at a tree. Why is such a small percentage of an apple tree the apple? If the objective of the tree is to produce apples, then why is 80% of the mass of the tree bark and wood and roots and leaves and branches and all of these other things? You see very clearly that the whole universe, the whole world that man was placed in, is a construct of ikar and tafel, of things which are primary and things which are ancillary to that which is primary. Now, does that mean that everything which is ancillary is unimportant? Of course not. You can't have apples unless you have a tree, unless you have branches, unless you have roots, unless you have leaves. But that's an important lesson of understanding what is the ikar and what is the tafel. So he says like this, She'olam haba ikar, ve'olam hazeh tafel. He says, this world is ancillary to the next. Kemo she'amru chazal, hatken atzmecha beprosdor, kedei shetikanes letraklin. And we know, our sages tell us this. This world is a corridor to the world to come. A corridor, by definition, is ancillary to the grand ballroom that awaits us. V'chein sheishes yemei ha'ma'aseh tfelim l'shabbat. He says the 6 days of the week are ancillary to Shabbos. V'chein b'peirot yesh klipa shehi shomer lapri. And in the world of produce, you have a fruit and you have the peel, the orange peel around the orange. The orange peel is ancillary, but you can't have oranges without orange peels. V'chol adam im oseh et ha'pu'ula asher nivra lema'ana hu koneh shleimut. What's important to remember that every human being, regardless of their station in life, as long as they fulfill their tafkid, as long as they fulfill their purpose in life for which they were created, that's how the individual achieves perfection. V'im hatafel hu tafel be'emet li'ikar, harei be'emtsa'uto na'aseh gam hatafel shalem. And if an individual is ancillary to another, as long as that individual does their job properly, as long as the orange peel acts like an orange peel, then the orange peel has achieved its purpose and has achieved perfection. But the orange peel can't act like the orange, because then it's not going to be a protector for the fruit if it thinks that it's the fruit. V'im ha'olam hazeh tafel be'emet lo'olam haba, u'mitkayem hatken atzmecha beprosdor v'chulei, nit'aleh gam olam hazeh u'mitkadesh. And therefore, for example, if a person has the attitude that this world truly is a corridor to the world to come. And that I'm not meant to be here to bask in pleasure, but I'm really here to work towards Olam Haba. I'm here to work towards the ultimate good. So then what have I done? I've elevated the status of Olam Hazeh by realizing its purpose. I've treated this world as a corridor. And by treating this world as a corridor, I have fulfilled the purpose of this world. And va'olam haba me'ir gam ba'olam hazeh v'yikuyam olamcha tir'eh b'chayecha. And not only that, but I'm able to get a glimmer of olam haba even in this lifetime, because I know I have the proper perspective and I treat this world in its proper context of being a corridor. He says, "V'chein sheishis yemei hamaseh imhem tefelim l'shabbos be'emes harei be'emtzaut Shabbat gam sheishit yemei hamaseh mitkanim u'mitalim." He says, if I treat the 6 days of the week as the objective being to get to Shabbos, I work and I work so that I can come to the Holy Shabbos with rest and relaxation and a spiritual energy, then you know what? Because I've placed the 6 days of the week in their proper context as the anticipatory days towards building towards Shabbos, then I've provided those 6 days with meaning as well. And like he gives an example, he says, "V'zeh sheramzu Chazal." That's what our sages alluded to when they said, "Shebechol yom achol lechaved Shabbos." Every day you should eat lechaved Shabbos, meaning that you should say, "Hey, look at this great product that I've just found. I'm going to put this aside." Whatever your favorite food is, you say, "I'm going to save this for Shabbos." And if you have that attitude that every day you go, I hope you don't go to Sobeys every day, but if whenever you're at Sobeys during the week, you say, what a great thing for Shabbos, right? Our sage is only giving that as a metaphor, really for a much greater idea, which is that you should be living the 6 work days so that you can enjoy Shabbos. And therefore, and therefore Shabbos illuminates not only Shabbos, but it illuminates all 6 days of the week. And so too, if a peel fulfills its purpose of protecting the fruit, then the peel itself has substantiated itself as being just as important as the fruit itself. The Yesh Lomari says, and this really was the whole essence of this story of Yaakov and Esav. The Esav haya yihiyeh tafel Yaakov. That was the objective, that Esav should be ancillary to Yaakov. V'al yedei Yaakov yasig gam Esav shleimut. As the Malbim had said, Esav would be the physical provider, would be ancillary to Yaakov's spiritual greatness, but through assuming that role as the peel to Yaakov's fruit, Esav could have achieved spiritual greatness thereby, by assuming his proper role as the tafel to the ikar, as the ancillary to the primary. Ach Esav zadon libo hisio v'lo ratza liot tafel Yaakov ve'asa atzmo ikar kilu bishvili nivra ha'olam. But Esav refused that. He said, I'm not going to allow myself to be the second fiddle. I'm not going to allow myself to be in the passenger seat and let Yaakov be in the driver's seat. I can't handle that. The world is for me. The world was made for me. I'm not just here to be ancillary to somebody else. I can't handle that. And that's why Esav has this ignoble defeat and dissipation from the world stage of Jewish history. And therefore he quotes the Medrash. He says, Uva Medrash Rabbah, at the end of Parshas Vayishlach, it says like this, Hateven v'hakash v'hamotz medayinim zeh im zeh. That in the future, straw and wheat and hay and stubble, right, these things which are the discards of wheat, are all going to start fighting with each other. Zeh omer bishvilo nizra hasadeh, v'zeh omer bishvili nizra hasadeh. Each one says, you know why the farmer planted wheat? So that I could grow. And the straw says that the field is for me. And the hay says that the field is for me. So kach umot ha'olam halalo omrim anu ikar uvishvilanu nivra ha'olam v'halalo omrim v'chulei. And so too the nations of the world say, it's for us that the world, it was for Rome that the world was created. It was for the U.S. that the world was created. It was for Canada that the world was created. And Amr Lahem Yisrael Hamtinu Ad Sheyagia Hayom. So what does Israel respond? Just like the farmer says, or the wheat kernels say to the other components of the wheat stalk, wait until the farmer brings in the harvest and we'll see what he keeps in his silo. Is he going to store grain or is he going to store hay? And the Jewish people say to the other nations, Hamtinu ad sheyagia hayom v'anu yodim b'shvil mi nivra ha'olam. Wait until the end of days when God brings everyone into his silo. And let's see who's provided with that sense of prominence and primacy. And that explains why Yaakov wants to bless Esav in the first place. Even though he knew that Yaakov was a greater tzaddik, that Yitzchak wanted to give Esav a bracha that would awaken him, that would open his eyes to realize what his true station, what his true function was in the world. Skip to the next paragraph. Esav couldn't handle it. And now we understand why Esav asks his father, Father, how do I tithe straw? How do I tithe salt? Now we understand, he says, his very essence came out of his throat, came out of his mouth. He considers himself to have primacy, even though he's really just the hay or the straw of the wheat. And he says, but because I know that I'm the straw and I can't handle the truth, I want to be able to tithe straw and treat it as something primary instead of the secondary and ancillary item that it truly is. And then we skip to the last paragraph and he says, Umizel yotzei limud l'cholish. This is an important lesson to every single human being. Sheyeda shemitzad ma'aseh atzmo eno nechshav leklum, rak mitzad mashu mechubar letahor o machmat chibor leklal Yisrael. He says, I have to realize that what makes me special is not me. What makes me special is the fact that I can serve others, that I can play a role in the rising to greatness of either one other person or the nation of Israel as a whole. And I am merely a leaf or a branch of the tree of Israel, and I'm here to play a role. And whether that role demands that I rise to the world stage of prominence, or whether someone else does, it doesn't matter, because we all have a role to play. And as long as we understand that we have a role, it makes no difference who's the Yaakov and who's the Esav, who's the Avram and who's the Ishmael. As long as we have a role to play, and we can contribute to that greatness to be achieved, then we achieve perfection through playing our role. And we achieve the opposite of greatness. We achieve smallness when we try to achieve that which we're not destined to achieve. And he says, and therefore, through others, through the nation of Israel's rise to greatness, our own individual acts are also perfected and raised up. But I can't say that intrinsically on my own I am deserving of this greatness, because who's to say that I am such a person? Who's to say that I am the fruit? Maybe I'm the peel. Maybe I'm the straw. Maybe I'm meant to be ancillary to something much greater than myself. And as long as we have that attitude that I am but straw, and my function is to help the greater good, then we can achieve true greatness. And true greatness is not fame, not prominence, but rather fulfilling our purpose and bringing this world to its next stage of perfection. Have a good day, everybody.